How do you get through those tough times? Part of it is reframing challenge. And you reframe that challenge simply by using different words. Like another way to look at this is, right? So you can say, oh my gosh, my kids are underfoot. I'm, trying to work and trying to keep them on top of their school. And you can get yourself into a spiral, or you start over and say, another way to look at this is. And that reframing is a very powerful exercise. So it's not to take away from the fact that it's challenging. It's just to say there's another way to look at this. And how can I look at this in a more positive light?
You are now listening to the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, the Going North podcast. I'm your host, certified self-leadership trainer and author of the best-selling book, Stay the Course, Dom Brightman. And you're going to be getting some goodies today from the guest that's up next. And today on the Super Special Awesome podcast that likes to highlight super special awesome humans, and those are the Going North podcast. We got one heck of a treat for you today, my friends. One heck of a treat for you today because we got one heck of super special awesome guest. Another kick butt woman, baby. Another hashtag Wonder Woman in the podcast building. Because this lady in particular, she summited Mount Denali at the age of 19, which is actually the youngest woman to complete this activity. My goodness, completing a mountain summit at the age of 19. It doesn't stop there, folks, because she loves adventure. She was also one of the first women to ever fly the Apache helicopter in the U.S. Army, and through her marvelous leadership and aviation skills, she earned the right to lead two flight platoons, and was the first woman to command an Apache flight company in the 2D Infantry Division. And after dealing with the wonderful U.S. of A. Army and doing some wonderful things there, she had a successful corporate career where she also founded her own company, the Grit Institute, a leadership institute committed to whole leadership development and a focus on grit and resilience. And with an emphasis on grit, she demonstrates how to tap into that passion and resolve to face any obstacle, own your sense of purpose, and become a leader of greatness. So let's give it up for the super special awesome Miss SHP herself, Miss Shannon Huffman Polson. How you doing today, Shannon?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing fabulous. It's a new day, new morning, new people, new shiny faces. I love it.
All good. All good.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Well, as you know, introductions aren't allowed to be 98 days long, so mind filling in any cavities I missed about you?
You've got a lot of it. It's great. I now have 2 boys, and so I try to chase them around. So I would say that's another big significant part of my life. But other than that, it's really an honor to be here with you and your audience and share the grit factor.
Oh, yeah. That's right, the magical grit factor indeed. Sometimes it's with sugar. Who knows?
That's right.
Yeah. Although I've never had grits with sugar, I'd rather not do that. I'm like, no, there's enough sugar in the food. Period. We don't need the dark grits too.
What do you put on your grits? What's your favorite way to have your grits?
Oh, just the classic, like salt, pepper, butter, like good stuff indeed. Hey, well, now granted, sometimes cheese too on occasion. Sometimes
cheese. Yeah, that's good. That's good. And I told you you're the first person to bring up grits with the grit factor, which I sort of love.
I'm surprised. Like, well, then again, I bring up weird stuff all the time, or stuff that folks don't think about all the time. So I guess I'll take that one and let everybody else stay above the water.
It's kind of a creative mind, right? You can put disparate concepts together. That's a creative mind. There you go.
Heck yeah, that's right. That's the way of living. Gotta be creative, especially nowadays where there's so much out there that they're trying to feed us. And it's like, hey, you know what? Let's feed back into the world like what you're doing with this new fabulous book, The Grit Factor, which is, my goodness, I think this is what, book 5 or 6 for you, right?
Well, it's the first in its genre that I've published. So it's the first leadership book that I've put out there, and it's really been this incredible honor because it's not just my own experience; it's the experience of dozens of other leaders in the vanguards of their fields. And it was several years of interviews and hearing their stories and their lessons learned, and being able to put that in a form that anybody can take that away. Anybody can consume those lessons and be able to apply that to their own lives.
That's what I'm talking about right there. That's right. Yeah, because folks are going to need, especially nowadays where women are kicking a lots of butt, and heck, even some of the stories, like they may be hidden and some of them remain hidden, but it's like, let's dig them up and actually put them out into the light because, like, it's 2021 and we might as well get past that point where it's like, some things need to stop being hidden, especially women out there who are actually doing something positive and doing something great, so that way they can inspire little girls who want to do something different outside the box that they can do it too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And women don't tend to share their stories as much as men do. So I think it really is worth that effort to bring them forward. And it's important not just for women, but for men. The leadership lessons and the grit factor are for every person. They just happen to come from women leaders. So I think that's a really important point as well, is that women and men will learn from the grit factor.
Heck yeah, I could definitely say that again. Men and women can learn from it because it's so darn true. It's like, hey, women are kicking butt, but hey, we can learn from them. We could definitely learn from them. We can always learn from each other. It's like a yin yang symbol.
Yeah, well, it's how it's supposed to work, right? It's really, we're meant to work in community, and we're meant to share our stories and share our lessons so that other people can be successful. And that is it's so important as well for women and men to see these incredible examples of leadership, so that they both have something to aspire to, but also something to understand the world in a broader and more holistic way.
That's right. All sorts of holistic goodness. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. So my goodness, so time in the army, flying wonderful planes and being able to keep your platoon safe against the wonderful dangers of, well, danger. There's really nothing wonderful about danger except if you're allowed to tell the tale about it. Oh my goodness. So out of all the leadership lessons that you've picked up throughout your whole entire life, are there any two that stick out to you the most?
If I think about the grit factor, and really what the grit factor ends up doing is taking and synthesizing these stories and these lessons learned from these incredible leaders. And it ends up breaking out into the grit triad. So there's three there, but I'll pick two for you. But that's commit, learn, and launch. And commit is this owning your past, essentially, right? It's owning your own story. It's drilling down to core purpose. That's the foundational work that every person has to do to be able to move forward successfully. And then learn is this deep engagement in the present. And that is building your team, because none of us do this alone, right? It's learning the art and the science of active listening, which truly is an art, truly is a science, something that all of us can work on every day. And then it's building those skills of grit and resilience, partly with the mindset that's needed for how you approach challenges every day. And then finally, launch. And launch is looking forward with audacity, with authenticity, and with adaptability. So the two that really stand out for me, that I come back to again and again, and that when I work with clients and they bring up challenges, we end up really honing in on these, are one is connecting to core purpose or heart purpose. Because when we really connect to what drives us outside of any challenge, outside of any organization, if you tether yourself to what matters most, right? That part that's the deepest inside of you, you can get through any kind of challenge and any kind of turbulence. So that's number one. Number two is the mindset that you approach challenge with. And this is so interesting because there's so much science behind this as well. But the great thing about mindset, and I really think of this mindset of grounded optimism, right? Never ever losing faith that you will ultimately prevail in the end, balanced with the understanding of the challenges that you face in the present. And that mindset is a choice that every single leader makes every single day. So it's not this thing where you just say, I don't feel so optimistic. It's not about what you feel, it's about what you decide to do. And that mindset is incredibly powerful.
Oh yeah, you could definitely say that again. The mindset is definitely powerful. That's probably the reason why it's like a buzzword nowadays in the entrepreneurial space too, because it's like, hey, you got to have that mindset here, a positive mindset, or better yet, even a growth mindset.
Exactly. And I will say, I do think that that positive mindset is both, it's inextricably linked with that growth mindset, right? Which is the understanding that anytime you do hard things, you get better at doing hard things. And the science is there to support that as well. But you've got to absolutely believe and be willing to do the work, right? It's about being willing to do the work and knowing that if you stick with it and you do the work, you ultimately will prevail in the end. Now, you might take a different path. That's a whole different story, right? You've got to be creative in your approaches as well. But you do the work, you stick with it, and you continue to find creative approaches, you will ultimately prevail in the end. You have to believe that. And that's the only way through the toughest times.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Definitely right about that because it's, especially in particular, because it's like you've basically had that wonderful training basically almost all your life, to be honest. And last year in particular was a tough time for the whole planet, and we're still dealing with it as well. So it's actually the perfect theme for the human resilience that we all need to tap into, because a lot of folks are going through some times right now, and we definitely need to tap into that wonderful magical grit that we all truly have within ourselves, and that can really grow and become better.
And Doc, I love that you said that, because there are some people, and I think when people start to feel discouraged, and this last year, I mean, year and more now counting, right, continues to be so difficult. And I think it's so important to remind yourself that grit is not something that comes easily, or that, is only for military pilots or big mountain climbers. Grit is innate to every single one of us. And you can build those skills of grit and resilience with some very small but consistent practices of things like gratitude. I know that sounds like that's such a crazy thing, but it's pretty clear that if you spend time each day in gratitude, it actually builds your grit and resilience. It's amazing, right? And so those sorts of connections to those small things consistently, as well as that understanding that you'll ultimately prevail in the end, those are available to every single one of us. And it's a good reminder when things are feeling really, really tough.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, indeed. Yeah, because I just said gratitude, and then I saw the magical grit book behind you. It's like a gritception back there, like it's telling you, like, hey, I'm a shiny book. This is a Shannonception right here. It's a grit session right here, seption right here. Like buy 5,000 copies. It's like, oh my gosh. Like, have you thought of an acronym for grit yet? Because you mentioned gratitude. That's like good shit.
Oh, I like that actually. Yeah, that's actually, well, how about like gratitude, resilience, integrity, and tenacity? I'm just coming off the top of my head here. I haven't thought about it actually, to be honest, but I like that. I like that.
And I like the fact you said resilience, because that's the second word I wrote down after gratitude. So it seems we're still the same wavelength there. I love it.
I can tell. There you go. Great minds think alike.
That's right, indeed. That's right. That gratitude, resilience, integrity, and tenacity. That's right. Gotta be tenacious, y'all. Definitely gotta be tenacious indeed. That's right. You gotta have the two D's, y'all. The dogged determination, baby. That's right.
Determination. Yeah. And that is one of those things where there's a researcher on grit at University of Pennsylvania, Angela Duckworth, who is really well known. Her work is incredible. And she has defined grit as a passion and perseverance towards a very long-term goal. And I think obviously she's the researcher, and that's fabulous. I have really thought of it in other times as this dogged determination, right? And it's because it doesn't always feel passionate. It doesn't always feel like, gosh, I'm thrilled to be here. It's just like, you got to show up, and you got to show up every day and do the work. And that's part of that grit that I think is not the sexy part, but it's a really important thing to remind ourselves that you show up, and you show up every day, and you do that work, and you work on getting better every single day as well, right? But if it's really an incredibly challenging time, you just got to show up. You show up each day.
Yeah, definitely can say that again. But funny enough, that actually can be the sexy parts, especially since you're a keynote speaker, because then you have more content to share later.
Well, there you go. There you go. That's true. Exactly. There you go.
It's like, yay, another story. Yay, another learning moment, a teaching moment. Hooray. Even though I hated the process in the moment.
Yeah. No, well, that's true, right? I mean, those are the best stories. And honestly, they're the best life lessons, is the hardest things. So if you keep that faith in the end, you keep pushing through, that is where your best stories are going to come. That's where your best life lessons are going to come. That's where your growth comes, right? Is from getting through those challenging times. So it's a good reminder as well. It's not always fun in the present. But there's so much that comes from it once you've done the work to get through.
I can say that again. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe you're a lady of faith. So how has faith been of major importance in your life thus far?
I mean, faith informs all of my life and how I look at life and opportunity and ways to contribute. And so really I've started to use that uh, I've started to use not the framework, but the idea that really we're here to contribute, right? It's not about just doing stuff or earning money or paying the bills, or I mean, those are all things that need to get done, but we're here to contribute in a meaningful way in the world. And so how can we use our gifts in the most meaningful way to make the greatest contribution to the world, which is to say, leave it better than when we came. And I really believe that is very much informed by my faith. I think my faith informs how I prioritize my life, how I work with other people, the projects that I'm willing to take on and the projects that I'm not. And so it's a huge part of my life. I can't disentangle it from any way that I make a decision. So I think it really comes down to saying I'm incredibly blessed with, not with it. Every experience has not felt like a blessing, but I think in my life, I am blessed. We are all blessed. And how do we find a way to take that blessing and give it back to the world?
Ah, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And all the fact you said you can't really disentangle yourself from it because that's really powerful right there. Because I feel like that's something that folks need to be reminded of. Because a lot of times folks may be like, hey, like, don't share your faith or whatever. Like, this ain't the place for it. But sometimes you carry it so strong with you and you actually have this certain radiance about you where it's like some people just can't ignore it. And you just have to really just acknowledge it for what it is. It's like, hey, this is the way I decide to live. It's one of my core values. It's something that's really helped carry me through and hopefully inspire others to carry through the same way too.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is it's interesting because it's not the hip thing to bring up, as I was reminded in a recent webinar that I did with a business group, and somebody reached out to me afterwards and said, "Hey, you said when someone asks me like, what are your practices that you do every day?" I said, "Well, my primary practice is try to keep my boys alive and have them show up at the dinner table." So, and
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, they're little, right? Like the people that say, I get up and I meditate for 2 hours, and I'm like, you don't have two kids, do you? Like that's great, but that's going to have to come later. But I do start every day with prayer, and I think that is helps to define the day. We start and end every day with prayer. We start every meal with prayer, and I mess up a whole lot. But at the end of the day, I think even in a setting that is a business setting, if somebody asks, hey, what are the things that are foundational to you? I'll say my faith is foundational to me. And what I realized is that because people are afraid to bring it up, it opens up space, I think, for others to say, hey, this is okay. It's okay to mention this. I'm not going to make anybody else believe anything that I believe or do anything that I do, but it is important to me. So if you want to know, then I'll share that. And I think by sharing that, that opens up space for others to be able to own that for themselves, which maybe that's part of what it is that I'm asked to contribute. I don't know. We're constantly trying to figure that out for sure.
There we go. Trying to figure out the magical Rubik's Cube of life. That's what I'm talking about, baby. That's right.
There you go. That's well, and the other thing is when my husband and I moved out of the city about 7 years ago, and we moved out to this small community, and there was not a faith community in our small community that matched a lot of our values. And so we actually started one. So we run a little lay fellowship. We're in our 6th year. And it's where we choose to spend our time. But we also have children. And I think that has really defined that, hey, you got to claim this. If you're going to teach your children, you have to claim it yourself, and you have to work on it yourself to be able to teach them. And so that, I think, has really helped to give us the foundation, the impetus to say, we need to make this a priority, because if it's not a priority in our lives, it's not going to be in their lives. And they won't see it in us to be able to take forward, because what you model to your kids is what they take, right? But then also the community projects that we've put ourselves behind are, I'm working on building a local library, and I've been working on that for 5 years, because I believe that we are meant to offer, right? We need to bring our gifts in a way that helps to build up the community and offer something to everybody, no matter who they are. And the library, I think, uniquely does that. So it's again, I would say that faith informs every one of those decisions and all of that effort. And I'm very blessed and grateful to be able to give back.
There we go. That's right, a place of worship and a library. Alrighty. Yes, indeed. No wonder I'm a Shannon fan. That's what I'm talking about. That's right. You get a whole
Yeah.
assortment of cupcakes with with your whole name spelled out on them, like your whole roll of spelled of Shannon cupcakes, the Huffman and Polson cupcakes. That's right, all the cupcakes. Now, granted, you're probably thinking all the calories. Oh God, no.
That's true. But Dom, as I interview leaders for the Grit Factor, as I listened to their stories and said, hey, what is it that you draw on? And I won't speak for every one of them, but there are several of them, many of them actually, that brought up faith as a really key ingredient for them. So whatever your spiritual connection is, however you define that, however you define God and your connection to the world and the universe, that was foundational for these leaders that had to get through really tough times, right? Some of them were deployed in combat. They flew in combat. They were the first women in a lot of their fields. And so they had this like double crucible that they were facing. And I really think that spiritual part of ourselves, again, however you define that, is a really important place to be centered and to be grounded, because when things are really, really tough, and you don't have connection to the rest of your team, you've got to have that grounding, and you can't do the work in the moment of trial, right? You've got to have built that up in advance. And so that's that daily practice. And I think that comes from gratitude and from and really thoughtful time, which you have to certainly prioritize because it's tough, especially with families and trying to keep businesses afloat and all those things that all of us are doing right now.
Oh yeah, I could say that again. Well, speaking of faith and floating, so in addition to faith, what's really kept you sane and kept you going through this pandemic, being a mom of two wonderful, energetic boys?
Yeah, they are definitely that. Well, we live out kind of in the woods, and the connection and the ability to get outside, the connection to nature, the ability to get outside is a huge gift for our entire family, and that has been instrumental to us in this pandemic time. It always is, but I think particularly now, and I'm just so grateful too that I just can't even imagine what you guys in cities have had to deal with, because at least we can get outside a little more, and walk outside in the woods, and there's wildflowers right now, so it grounds you literally and figuratively. So I would say both my family, my faith, and nature.
There you go, some wildflower swag. That's what I'm talking about. Yes, indeed.
There you
Yes,
go.
indeed. Yep, that's right. Because folks weren't being a fan of being trapped in the house. Like, oh God, I didn't really know these people. Oh my goodness, I need to throw up.
It's been tough on some families too, right? Like it's been really hard. There's been unfortunately, a lot of families that haven't survived it intact, and it's been a tough year for everybody, no matter how it is that you look at it, for sure. I will say, it's been tough for us. Our kids are still at home. They're still learning at home, but I think we're starting to find the rhythm, which has also given us this incredible opportunity to be able to grow closer as well. So I think, and that is one of the skills, I will say, just to bring it back to the grit factor, right? How do you get through those tough times? Part of it is reframing challenge. And you reframe that challenge simply by using different words. Like another way to look at this is, right? So you can say, oh my gosh, my kids are underfoot. I'm, trying to work and trying to keep them on top of their school. And you can get yourself into a spiral, or you start over and say, another way to look at this is. And that reframing is a very powerful exercise. So it's not to take away from the fact that it's challenging. It's just to say, there's another way to look at this. And how can I look at this in a more positive light?
I love the fact that you brought that up, because there's like so many things in my head, and that one didn't even pop up yet, because we all need reminders of that. Like, we need to reframe challenges that we face. Indeed, that's how we learn from them.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. And you could ask from the faith perspective, what's the blessing in this, And I will say, I don't like to ask that if somebody has just lost somebody that they loved, or that's a terrible question. So I don't personally believe in that approach towards that kind of a question. But if something is a challenging circumstance, like the pandemic, or it could be a lost job, it could be having your kids at home, or whatever that is. Hey, another way to look at this is, what's the blessing in this? And force yourself to come up with that and focus on that piece of it. That doesn't mean you don't still have the challenge, but That reframing is literally a technique that's used in the Army's Master Resilience Training Program for soldiers and for their families going through really challenging times after multiple deployments. So it's a tried and true method developed at University of Pennsylvania. It's not just pop psychology, and it's really worth integrating how it is that we all go through our lives.
Heck yeah, I can say that again. It's like, hey, if you can compartmentalize something and be like, hey, I'm still good. All right, no broken limbs. All right, shoot. Oh, what did I learn? All right, so don't fly near that mountain. Okay, cool. All right, I'll know that for next time.
There you go. There you go. Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am, indeed. So, since you've been on like thousands of these wonderful interviews, is there a question that you wish you'd be asked more often?
Oh gosh, that's a good one. There's a good question right there. One of the stories I really do like to share, though, I will say, is when people ask and they say, what made you write the Grit Factor? And I think back, and it was about 7 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago, there was a young lieutenant that reached out to me, and she was getting ready to go down to Fort Rucker, Alabama. She was going to start the same journey that I had done, which is go through flight school and then go out into the Army as an aviation leader. And she asked if I would mentor her through this online officer mentorship program. And I said, of course, I'd love to do that. I was thrilled that she had reached out. And then I thought, oh my gosh, like it's been a long time since I've served in uniform. I was in this integration as one of the first women to fly the Apache. I've now transitioned out. It's been a while since I've flown. I've gone through business school and I've worked in the corporate world. So how can I scale what I offer to her? How can I bring together more advice and more wisdom than just what I have from my own experience? And then if I do that work, which I know will be significant, how do I scale the people to whom it's available? And that was really the genesis of what became the Grit Factor. It was going out and starting to reach out to people and early women general officers across the services. It was aviators from World War II, a WASP from World War II to the present. There's a Navy submariner, a combat rescue swimmer in the Coast Guard, one of the first women Army Rangers, and so many more. And they were so generous in sharing their stories and their lessons learned. And so my job really was to say, how do I take all of this incredible generosity, synthesize it down to those core precepts that come up again and again that every single one of us has got to learn or internalize, do the research then to fill in the gaps and to support that, and then come away with tactical exercises. So that really is the genesis of what became the Grit Factor and the Grit Triad, this commit, learn, and launch, right? Is what do these leaders have? They have grit for sure. So what does that mean? How do we pull that apart and make that apply to every single other person that might be facing challenge, facing change, looking to develop themselves, whatever that might be? And the Grit Factor really does that. And so it's been this incredible honor to say, from that first question, hey, would you be my mentor as I start this process? Again, going back to what we talked about earlier, how do I take this opportunity to mentor this one person, but then best contribute to the world? How can I make my experience contribute to others in a meaningful way? And so that really is the genesis of what became the Grit Factor. And it's been such an honor to bring it to companies and organizations across the country and literally around the world. I just talked to the UK last week. Again, I actually have done several engagements with the UK. And so these are universal, right? It's not just the US, it's not just the military, it's universal and it crosses industries. And it really, again, it truly has been an honor. But I love this way of starting to learn to think about things of, okay, how do I take this and then best contribute to the world, which is an opportunity for every single one of us.
Ah, yeah, that's what I'm talking about, indeed. That's right, indeed. And if I'm not mistaken, you said incredible generosity, right? Oh my goodness. Like that's the new IG right there.
Well, I mean, to share your story that's generous, right? To share your story is generous. And I think women are often conditioned to not share their stories, right? To be a little bit more in the background, or we're socialized that way. And at the end of the day, like we all need to share those stories. Men need to understand more that women are leading, have been leading for a very long time, incredibly effectively. And women need to see that, as you brought up, girls and boys need to see that, right? To understand that every single one of us has unique opportunities to contribute in meaningful ways. And you can't define that by a race or a gender or anything else, right? It's each person has gifts to develop and to give back to the world. And we really want to create a world where everybody has the opportunity to offer those gifts. I mean, that's the kind of world we want to live in, I think.
Heck yeah, I could definitely say that again. Because everybody has a great contribution that they can give to the wonderful planet of Earth. That's right, we all have great gifts to share. Folks are ready to unwrap them too.
Yeah, and this world needs it, don't they? Especially right now, this world needs it. All, I mean, both the Earth itself and all of us that live on it. So
Oh yeah, because Earth be mad, be like, come on, humans. Like, I was doing good until y'all kept multiplying and doing evil stuff. Like, can y'all, like, chill for, like, a good 100 years or something?
yeah, and I'm so glad there's such great work being done towards that end, but we have a lot of work to do, right? And a long, long way to go. And every single one of us need to be making those choices that are careful and thoughtful and are taking care of this place that's our home, right?
Oh yeah, that's right. Just because Elon Musk is building that wonderful rocket to Mars doesn't mean everybody's going, and it doesn't mean we can live there.
Well, I mean, look at Mars. Do you want to live on Mars? I don't want to live on Mars. I want to live
Exactly.
here. This is, I have wildflowers. Mars is not where I want to end up.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, hey,
I
the
don't
exciting.
actually find that appealing in the least. I don't know why anyone would. I mean, it's the science of it is great, right? The science is important. The discovery is important. The willingness to learn is important, but it's critical actually. But that's not where you want to live. This is our planet. This is where we're meant to be.
Yes, indeed, you can say that again. So, since it's our planet and we all are creative human beings, I hear you love to paint. So, if you had the biggest canvas in the world and you had the biggest paintbrush in the world, where would your canvas be and what would you love to paint?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I just put up a painting in our home that I've been working on, and I work a lot more with abstract painting. So it's not it's meant to represent more than it is meant to be something that you can immediately identify. So I use a lot of colors that are come from the environment, and so it will be here where I live. Here we live in our dream place and our dream home in the middle of the woods and the mountains is exactly where I love spending my time. So yeah, lots of greens and browns and blues, and there's yellows and purples out with the wildflowers now. But I like the abstract representation of how it is that we walk on this planet and live here. So it's a lot of fun. It's a nice counterpoint to my regular work.
Oh, okay. So, abstract goodness, that's what I'm talking about.
There you go. It's
Yeah.
really playing with color and texture, right? And just trying to see how things work together. And at the end of the day, it's how we work and walk in the world, is try to find the best way for disparate things to work together, like grit and grits, right? It's all the
uh,
different concepts and how do they relate? Yeah, that's the opportunity.
yeah, I'm tempted to make that the episode title, Grits and Grits.
There you go. I really can't believe that nobody's brought that up before. That's hilarious. That's good.
Yeah. But hey, it's all good. It's all good. There's got to be a bunch of creative people on the earth eventually and all that good stuff. And heck, even the fact that you do abstracts. Abstracts freaking awesome. They make great desktop backgrounds.
Oh, there you go. Well, fair enough. It's a good living room background too. So there you go. You don't get too pulled into any one place. I figure we live in a place where we look out at the landscape all the time, so I don't need to paint another landscape, but I just want to have another way to interact with what it is that we see. So I'm not going to improve on what God made.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about indeed. Yep, especially if you wake up in the middle of the night, you don't want to wake up and be like, hey, why am I in a forest? Oh, wait, this is my painting. Oh, never mind.
There you go. But it's an interesting thing because I do think that it's something that I've come back to, that I've always loved, and it's something that I didn't make space for. And as I'm engaging in this, and it's not my primary work. My primary work is speaking to audiences and teaching and inspiring and motivating and helping them to reframe systems and organizations, right? But really, the ability to be creative in another way will inform the way that you're able to work with others. And so I think whatever those gifts are that we have, it's worth prioritizing the time to really spend on them and say, how can this inform the other work that I'm doing? Maybe this isn't my paid work, but how does it inform the paid work that I'm doing? How does it inform the way that I'm in the world? And I think it always will. And it's interesting right now, companies are desperate for innovation and for creative approaches. And how do we get people thinking outside of these outside of the box? And so that creativity does in fact inform the way that I'm able to work with clients in meaningful ways. And wow, we really do need to innovate right now more than anything else, right? We need to find new ways of doing things so that we can walk more carefully in the world and contribute meaningfully.
Oh, heck yeah, I could definitely say that again, because heck, those creative exploits, like, hey, they actually fuel your main work. It's, heck, even remember the time it was like this, oh God, it was an intense kickboxing CrossFit session, 2 hours it was the middle of the hot summer too, like, it looked like I just got baptized. That's how much sweat I had. And out of nowhere, I got this idea for a book chapter. I just started writing. And next thing I knew, I had a good 2 pages written down after from working out. And it's like, wow, all right, this is freaking awesome. Like, this is really good. It's like sometimes you want to go to something and maybe like, oh, this is a great presentation. Maybe do some research. But sometimes it may be just having that good old sweat session or doing some abstract painting or something else creative to really get those juices going and flowing.
Well, for sure. And it's tempting, isn't it? If for many of us to just sit down and like gut through it, right? And that's not always especially for creative, if you're trying to write or you're trying to come up with a new solution, you've got to get your brain disengaged actually, because it'll keep working on the problem, but you've got to give it a whole different avenue to get there. So good for you. Yeah, that's a great way to do it. Workouts are a great way.
Yeah, that's right indeed. So, my goodness, all this magical knowledge, we're coming down to the magical question that every guest gets to receive. And that is if you're to wake up tomorrow and you're 25 again, but this time in the current year of 2021 with all of your knowledge and experience, what advice would you give to yourself?
I love that question. So it's actually one of the last parts of the grit triad. Again, commit, learn, and launch, right? Past, present, and future. And looking towards the future, the middle piece of it is authenticity. And it's sometimes it's overused. I think it goes back though to if you really truly live in accordance with who you are meant to be, that's connecting down to that core purpose. It's connecting to, again, however you define your spiritual life. You live authentically to who you are. It allows you to contribute the way that you are meant to in the world in the most meaningful way you're meant to contribute. So you got to cut out all the noise, right? That tells you who you should be and how you should be in the world, especially for women, I will say, but it's not actually especially for women. It's all of us, right? It's all of us are kind of fed these voices about who we should be and why we should be that. And you've really got to do the deep internal work and then connect to who you truly are and allow yourself to contribute that way in the most meaningful way you can. And that authenticity is a gift if you can find it.
Alrighty. Alright, so you heard that right, folks. Authenticity is a gift if you can find it. So no pleather jacket, y'all. Find the real leather. That's right.
There you go. Metaphorically, of course, here on the planet too, right? So there you go. That's right. Or you can find the recycled. This is a recycled leather. They do recycled leather jackets now.
Oh, wow.
So there you go. You can find those. Yeah.
All goes back to innovation.
Innovation. That's right. Find new ways of doing things.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, hey, instead of killing 2 birds with 1 stone, it's just being cooler than 3 cucumbers.
I'm going to have to think about that one, Dom.
Okay, we could go back to being cooler than 2 cucumbers. Oh, man. Well, for those who want to be cooler than 97 cucumbers and pick up 98 plus copies of your magical books and bring you on to speaking all that wonderful, smooth Shannon jazz, what's the best way for folks to reach out to you and learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, thanks, Dom. I'm at, you can find me online at my website, which is shannonpolson.com, Polson. I'm on LinkedIn pretty often and on Twitter. at A Border Life. And I do a little bit on Instagram as well at Shannon H. Polson. So I'd love to see you online anywhere, but my website's probably the best place for most of the information.
Well, there you have it, folks. There you have it. Go over to shannonpolson.com. Check out all the wonderful stuff she's doing. Got some great stuff that she's cooking up there, and she's got this awesome book called The Grit Factor. Pick it up, share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with your penguin, your cat, your camel, share it with a giraffe too, so that way they can tap into their inner grit as a giraffe, because they both start with a G. And be on the lookout, because if I'm not mistaken, this is the first of a trio, right? Trio book series, right?
Well, not quite determined yet, but the next one I'm working on right now and hope to pitch pretty soon. So I hope we'll have some news on that sometime this year. But yeah, there's certainly more coming. So stay tuned. And if you're interested as well, at the Grit Institute, there's online training available that follows the book, but goes a lot deeper into each of the precepts. So that's another great option for all your listeners.
That's right, folks. And Harvard Business Review better pick this up again, baby. That's right. They already got this project. They might as well grab all the other ones.
They've been an amazing partner in this. Absolutely. I'm really, really grateful for the partnership.
That's right. And I'm grateful for you and all the stuff that you do. So any parting words before we close up the recording shop, Shannon?
I loved being on here with you, Dom, and thanks to all of your listeners for tuning in. I hope you'll pick up your own copies of The Grit Factor and pick them up for all your friends, your family, your colleagues, your coworkers. It truly is an honor to bring it into the world, and I love hearing from people. So reach out and let me know what you thought of it, what you think of it, how it's changed your life. I'd love to be able to share that with others.
You just got done listening to another powerful, power-packed episode of the Going North podcast. I hope you really enjoyed what you heard. Go check out the guest stuff. It's all in the show notes on the website, dombrightman.com, and also reach out to those that you've just heard as well. And keep going north.